Welcome, Andrea. I see you've joined as well. Hello. We're just going to give Carl a few more minutes to join because I don't see him on there. So let's hold off for a few minutes. Oh, and I see Sarah Rose, one of our presenters for today. Hi, Sarah. Thanks for joining. Look forward to hearing about your project in a little bit. All right, everyone. So I just gave Carl a call and I didn't I'm not sure what he might be having some technical difficulties joining, but why don't we can go ahead and get started until he's able to join. And we can start with a roll call and calling the meeting to order, and just kind of hear about what everyone has been up to since we last met. So why don't we start with Marette? What's been going on and what do you have to share with us today?
Well, it's just been lovely in Central Oregon most of the time, and lots of flowers are starting to bloom. So I've been out botanizing for fun, which is way more fun now that I'm not getting paid to do it. And I guess I've been chatting with our partners here locally to see how things are going with Trout Unlimited and Central Oregon Land Watch. And then I'm going to be doing a 30th anniversary tour with the Deschutes Land Trust. Rika Ayad is their executive director. And so it's been 30 years since we started the Land Trust. So it's exciting that it's still doing so well. And a lot of times nonprofits start and they just sort of fizzle out after a while, but the Land Trust has really done well over the years. And so I'm really proud of them. And that's about all. Just looking forward to our field trip in July.
Great, thanks, Marette. Hey, Carl, I see you've joined. I just asked Marette to share what she's been up to, but go ahead and take it away. Oh, it looks like you're on mute, Carl.
Hey, I'm sorry I'm late. I tried to get in and I had to do some strange, funky code, and it didn't work. It made me like read some strange thing and type it in. And did anybody else have that? Yeah. So anyway, mine wasn't working very good. Maybe I need new glasses or something. But anyway, great. Glad to be here. So, hey, Marette, I think everybody knows Marette's really working hard for us on our upcoming trip, and really appreciate you organizing all that. I'm really looking forward to seeing these things we've been hearing about, and get to see them up front will be great. So thanks, Marette. So Jim Hammond, what's going on with you? You're on mute.
I'm just doing the usual spring things, getting the garden in and repairing pipes that need fixing after winter. But I did go and run the East Oregon Half Marathon in Spray, which I'd been wanting to do for about 30 years. And it was a lot of fun. It's certainly I wouldn't say a clash, a commingling of cultures when you have runners from Bend and Portland and Boise finishing on the finish line in Spray with an NRPA rodeo going on at the same time. and all of Central Oregon's cowboys and cowgirls there. But that was fun, and I will do it again. Other than that, that's about all. I went fishing this morning, did fine, but other than that, I can't think of anything.
So Jim, you're at your place out in the desert?
No, not today. I'm not. I'm in John Day today.
Oh, okay, and John Day. Okay, great. Hey, Mark Stern, what's up?
Hey, Carl, as well, I shared with others before you got on, we spent the first weekend May on the Owyhee River, which was a great experience. And it didn't snow, it didn't rain, it was warm, which is 2/3 of the battle out there. And some pretty interesting guides. It was a group called Momentum out of Ashland. But one of the guides was from India. He'd been an expedition leader for 30 years. He'd, done rivers in India, Ethiopia, Norway, South America. So I asked him about the one in Ethiopia. He goes, yeah, it was the Blue Nile. I go, well, what was hard about it? And he goes, well, they're having a civil war, so we had to have a military person on the front of the raft with a rifle over his shoulder to identify who we were. And he said the water wasn't so bad, but what made him nervous was the 16-foot crocodiles in the river, including one that reached up and bit the oar one time. So that made the Owyhee look pretty tame, all things considered. We came through Malheur on the way back, spent 3 or 4 days out there poking around. A lot of water out there this year. It was really kind of fun to see the north half of the refuge, which hasn't had water in the last 5+ years. It was full of water and full of water birds. So it was kind of nice to cruise through there too.
Well, that's great. I've always wanted to do the Owyhee, but was there like a lot of water? Was there pretty good flow? And
I think there was good flow. We were the first week in May, and it was amazing how quickly it was coming down. So I think we went at an adequate flow, but not a high flow. The gearboat actually tipped over because it went through a raft and it bounced off a rock, and then it came up sideways on another one, and then it's they're pretty top heavy, and it just flopped over. So that created some interesting. The crew was kind of amazing. They had ropes and pulleys, and it was quite an effort to get it righted up, so to speak.
Well, not to belabor the rafting thing, but they're starting to raft in the footprint of the reservoirs on the Klamath. And
yeah, the guides we were with were going over there to do some running, and
yeah, I can't wait to do that. I'm a little bit reluctant to do it on my own until I've gone down it with somebody else. But it sounds like the JC Boyle Reach is just 2s and 3s, I've heard, and it'd be really fascinating to go down there. Apparently, it's a gigantic California poppy explosion where they planted all the seeds, and the whole banks are bright, brilliant orange for miles. So it's be a really interesting trip. So maybe that's something I'll do. Kelly Timchak, how are you?
I am doing good. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Great. We've been doing boating too, so it must be the season. We went and spent over Memorial Day weekend, went down to the Mattole River in Northern California and at a friend's cabin, and hung out there and did a bunch of camping and mountain biking and swimming in the Mattole, which is usually freezing, and I thought I would not get in, but it was not as cold as expected. So great for people, not great for fish. Same story in the Illinois River here. Down in the Lower Rogue, we took our kids up in the kayaks and then boated up to a spot. And again, the water feels a little warm, I would say, for early June, but beautiful. So we're having a lot of, our creeks are pretty down, pretty low. We haven't had any water really since March. So it's been a slow, I thought we were coming into water year looking a little better, but it kind of, the tap turned off. And we're just gearing up. We have our big Rogue River cleanup this weekend. It's our 20th anniversary of our river cleanup. So we're just gearing up for that and seeing, different partners come to the table, and really excited for that. it's been a pretty fun little spring here, I would say.
Your kids have a great time. You're taking them on the best stuff, man. Every time we talk to you, you've done something really cool with them. See,
They're
that's
pretty lucky.
great parenting. Andrea Hansen, how are you?
I am doing great. Since it is my 3rd month at OPRD, I am still working on getting my feet under me. But I'm enjoying it, and it's been a great transition. Lots of wonderful people who work here.
Great. So that's things are going well for you there. Are you finding that you got a role to play for them? And
Yes, no,
Yeah.
it's exciting, and not only taking on the natural resources in Oregon, which I've done for 20 years, but I also have cultural resources and historic resources and scenic highways, and so it's a great learning opportunity, and I really enjoyed it.
Well, great. Well, we're certainly glad to have you
Thank
on
you.
board here. Really looking forward to working with you as we
Thanks.
move along. Okay, who else we have here? Riva, what's up with you?
Yeah, well, I haven't been up to anything as exciting as you all have been because I've been dealing with a back injury, which is kind of a bummer, but I'm getting better and I'm doing PT and hopefully I'll be out there doing all those fun rafting and biking and swimming things that you guys are doing. So that's
Well, we're
about
glad-
it for me.
Glad you're feeling better.
Yep,
Well, let's see.
Definitely getting there.
My wife and I just got back from Iceland. We took a nice trip. Interestingly, we were there for 3 days. It was quite a whirlwind trip, but there's a direct flight from Portland that they're promoting. It's only 7 hours, which isn't too bad. And we got some tours and kind of cruised around, and I got to go fish in what they call the Highlands, which is this high volcanic plateau that is rock and a few clumps of moss, and with these incredible rivers traversing them, and caught a bunch of really beautiful Arctic char, and it was really great. But the most striking thing to me about Iceland were the horses. There's a breed of horses, the Icelandic pony, and they hate it if you call it a pony. But the Icelandic horse, it's a little bit small of stature than normal, and they came over with the Vikings 1,000 years ago in their boats. And it's against the law to bring any other horse breed into Iceland. They're trying to keep the genetics pure, and they're in demand all over the world. They export them because people just really like them. They're really attractive. They're smaller stature. They're really shaggy. They're hardy. They can live in Iceland. In fact, they do better than cattle. And I was curious why everywhere we went, every farm had a bunch of horses. And I go, man, what are they doing with all these horses? And they do sell them abroad, but actually they're their cattle and they eat them. So it's a big part of the Icelandic diet because they do so well. And they don't name the horses that they eat. They just name the horses that they ride. So I learned a lot about that. But the horse thing was the coolest thing about Iceland. So, okay. So there we are. I think we got everybody. Riva, did I get everybody? Is anybody I missed? I got 2 pages here. We don't have Sristi is said she's not going to be here. And that's because I think you all appreciate this. Sristi is just killing it at the legislature. As you know, she's a registered lobbyist and she's got all kinds of stuff going on. And a little bit later, we'll update that. But that's why Sristi's gone. And then Mark Labhart is at a big meeting of, I think, the Western commissions, wildlife commissions. And he always has got great stories coming back from that because he learns all kinds of things about how other states are doing things. And so Riva, I'm not sure when we talked about the agenda, we should give a legislative update in there somewhere, just kind of where things stand with all of the bills. I got a little bit of information, and maybe some other people have more. So we'll do that a little bit later on. I think at this point, Reba, you wanted to notify the folks in the audience that are not committee members.
Yes, definitely. And also just to add, we also have a few more folks that aren't able to join today. Jane Hartline won't be able to make it. And Mauricio is actually at a People of Color Outdoors board retreat, so he's not able to join today. But he's looking forward to our in-person meeting in July. Yeah, so thank you all for joining. Let's see, we have our guest presenters, Tim Gresseth and Colin Reynolds, who have joined. We have Catherine Ballard, a member of the public who has joined, Misty, and then I'm seeing a phone number that I don't see a name for, but thank you all for joining. Thank you, Sarah Rose, as well, who's going to be a guest presenter. Yeah, we appreciate you guys taking the time to join and hear about OCRF priorities. So thanks for taking the time.
Great. So why don't we move to the minutes? You have that slide there for us.
Yeah, just give me a second to pull it up. Let's see. There we go. Can you all see that okay?
Yeah, I got it. We get someone to make that motion.
I would move to approve the May 6, 2025 meeting minutes with the continued authority to correct spelling, grammar, and punctuation.
I think that was
I second.
And we got
I
a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, I see hands and eyes. So that is passed. Great. Well, Reba, I am afraid I'm not able to find my agenda. I can't find it. So I'm going to let you, I think we have a presentation now. Is that?
That's correct, Carl. We have, first up, we have the Northeast Oregon Highway 82 Wildlife Crossing Project. So thank you for Tim Gresseth from Oregon Wildlife Foundation and Colin Reynolds, Defenders of Wildlife, for joining today. They're going to be talking about their project. And if it's applicable, and if you guys have the time, if you could also, this was a request from Vice Chair Valadrian, if you could share the importance of, having sustained multi-year funding from OCRF, if it applies to your project, and what's been the impact on your organization. I think the committee would enjoy hearing about that. Impacts of OCRF. So go ahead and take it away, and we look forward to hearing a little bit about what you guys have been working on. I will stop sharing.
Cool. And just to clarify, we're up first right now, Reba? Awesome.
That's correct. Yeah, I think I had it wrong before. You guys are first on the agenda.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. I am going to share my screen. So hopefully you can see it, and then I'll make it into the presentation mode. All right. Assuming you all can see and hear this, or see this and hear me. Again, hi, everyone. I guess I'll start off, Tim. My name's Colin Reynolds. I'm with Defenders of Wildlife, and I'm here with Tim.
Yeah, Tim Gresseth, the Executive Director of the Oregon Wildlife Foundation, and we're pleased to be able to talk about this project with you.
Fantastic. Okay. So I'm going to orient you slightly to what we're seeing here in just a second. So Oregon 82 in Wallowa County in the northeastern part of the map, so the top right corner, is one of the most dangerous stretches of road in eastern Oregon and in Oregon for general for wildlife vehicle collisions. So just to orient you to this map, and I'll zoom in a sec. So this is what we call a wildlife vehicle collision hotspot map. And this is for ODOT Region 5 for the years basically 2019 to 2023. And you'll notice one area that is red, meaning that there's 41 or more wildlife vehicle collisions per mile. And that one area is Oregon 82 in Wallowa County. So I will then move to the next slide, which will zoom in on that top right area. And this is what it looks like zoomed in. So if you all have had the opportunity to travel out there, go to Joseph, go to Enterprise, go to Parts Interior, what we're looking at here is 82, the road that you take to get into those areas. You come out of the Minot Canyon around milepost 42. And from that point down south is one of the most dangerous stretches of roadway in all of Oregon. And within this roadway, moving to the next slide, we have many bisecting priority wildlife connectivity areas. So this slide's a little, there's a lot going on here, but basically the takeaway is you'll see some hexagons that are kind of strung out on the slide like spaghetti. Those are your priority wildlife connectivity areas, and those intersect Oregon 82 in several locations. So moving to the next slide, and Tim, please hop in if you need at any point.
I have a quick question. You say it's like 41 impacts per mile. Is that on an annual basis? Is that how that number is generated?
Yeah, yes, sir. So I would say that's ODOT's numbers there. And as I move this on my screen a little over, basically what they've done, I believe, since this is ODOT's numbers, that they've taken the average per mile from a 4-year time frame, and that's where they, out of all the roadways that they've analyzed, that's one of the highest, and that's why it's identified by red being bad, and what that means is that on average 41 or more WVC per mile over that stretch of 4 years.
And Carl, I'll just jump in here too and say that the data that's behind this wildlife vehicle collision map is largely an undercount, and that's because it only includes large-bodied animals that have actually been collected by ODOT maintenance crews from the right-of-way of ODOT managed highways and freeways. And so, if you've hit an animal, they don't just flop over on the shoulder many times. Unfortunately, they'll become injured. They go off into the brush and they die there. And so this number only reflects those actual recovered carcasses, not any animals that died outside the right of way. It also doesn't include any smaller species. So this is just large-bodied animals. Think deer, elk, bear, antelope, primarily, and almost in that order, I think, if I remember correctly.
Great, thank you.
So let's go back in time a little bit to summer 2023. So there's some initial discussions amongst stakeholders about organizing a project to reduce these wildlife vehicle collisions and increase species permeability across these barriers. This group, after a pretty exhaustive search, decided to focus on that 22-mile stretch of roadway in Wallowa. And over time, we called ourselves the Wallowa County Wildlife Crossing Coalition. And this coalition consists of, here's a sample of the organizations on your screen, sort of throwing it all at you, but we have from OHA, Defenders, OWF, of course, TRCP, many organizations and groups. We have Confederate Tribes Umatilla Indian Reservation as well, and some local representation.
That local representation includes Liza Jane. Did she contact you, Reva, about being with us?
Yeah, I think she's the phone number that I didn't
Ah.
recognize earlier. She's dialed in.
Okay,
She should be
great.
here.
Hello.
Hey, Eliza
I'm
Jane, I
staring at
just,
staring at my stupid phone because my laptop only gives me a black screen for you guys, but I'm enjoying listening. Sorry I can't see your mugs.
well, Eliza Jane, I saw your 6 ranch sign there, so I had to bring it up.
Okay. Yeah, I'm part of the team for
Okay.
sure.
Great.
Awesome. It's so great to hear your voice, Liza Jane. So moving on in spring 2024, Oregon Wildlife Foundation submitted an OCRF grant for just over $82,000 in the spring 2024 session titled Northeast Oregon Highway 82 Wildlife Crossing Project. We were super fortunate, speaking only for myself, that, I was super thankful to have this award come through. And that funding was used to hire Samara Group and SWCA, which are contracting firms that many of y'all are likely aware of, to begin a mitigation analysis and conceptual designs of the roadway. And they began that analysis in fall 2024, and they expect to conclude that analysis and designs later this summer, July and August. So what we have on this screen, this is a complicated chart, that basically shows where we are in this sort of process. Your columns are months and your rows are different tasks. This is all to say, hey, we've gone through, SWCA, Samara Group, they've done a great job leading us through this process, doing project outreach, doing interviews, doing some site visits. And where we are now, we started, we did some interviews in the fall, they did a corridor analysis, and we did a November site visit. And one things that we looked at, moving to the next slide, are some potential crossing locations. So this is one site on milepost 42.7. And I'll just show a couple more. This one is the Wallowa River Bridge at milepost 59.9. And this last one is a potential overcrossing site at milepost 60.3. So moving back to that timeline, if you go to the sort of bottom rows, we just concluded workshop 2. So this row second from the bottom. And if you look at the column, that was in April. And at that workshop, we evaluated several crossing alternatives. So what we see on this screen is we've basically taken that Oregon 82 corridor, and what this map depicts is that 22-mile corridor broken up into 2 segments, just so we could display it on the screen. Along the corridor, as depicted on the screen, Jenna and Leslie of Samara and SWCA sort of identified, they put icons on the screen of all the different locations that they performed the analysis. And what we did this last workshop in April is we took, I think there's probably 15 going on 20 locations, and we identified as a coalition 10 locations for further development into a conceptual design. And these locations are what we see on the screen. Apologies, this is a little blurry. I want to kind of make it big so y'all can look at it, but these are 10 locations that our contracting colleagues are going to perform that additional analysis. And we expect them to conclude this by July to August. And what we have on the screen, just to further orient to you, is basically we have different rows showing the mileposts, what the potential preferred alternative would be, and then the species that would benefit. So for example, the top row, milepost 42.7, that would be an overcrossing. I showed a picture of what that site would look like. And, the species would, we're looking at terrestrial species, deer, elk, potentially birds with some additional vegetation. So, and then it goes down that list. So once we receive the final analysis, we expect the coalition will likely, want to process that and proceed on one or more sites to begin what we would call a phase 2 of the project. This is phase 1, that would be phase 2. And of those 3 pictures I showed earlier, all 3 of those pictures are sites that made this final cut.
Colin, do you mind if I jump in really quickly?
Absolutely.
Just a note on what the mitigation analysis entails is it starts with a desktop scope, and so they'll look at land ownership, they'll look at existing highway infrastructure like culverts and bridges, and what they're doing is lining that up with, relatively speaking, where we're seeing higher than average wildlife vehicle collisions geographically on the map, and so trying to figure out if we have animals that are trying to cross. Clearly, that's indicated by the number of wildlife vehicle collisions. If we have places where wildlife are trying to cross, what we're trying to do is kind of correlate that with, is there a culvert nearby that could be replaced with something larger that would accommodate deer, for example, or could it be retrofitted in a way that would favor wildlife movement and passage? And so that's what this whole process is about. And then the prioritization comes down to what are those places that seem to be the most likely locations for a success with an overcrossing or an undercrossing or a retrofit. And then some of that is dictated, of course, by land ownership. One note I would just say on Highway 82 is that virtually every potential crossing location we identified has private land. It's interfacing with private lands on both sides of the highway. So unlike other road crossing projects around the state of Oregon, where there may be a nexus with publicly owned lands, along this stretch of highway, this is all private land. So in a lot of ways, it's new. It's kind of a brand new a new challenge, if you will, of trying to figure out how we do projects like this that benefit wildlife movement and reduce wildlife vehicle collisions, but do that in a way where we are working collaboratively and alongside private landowners to make that happen.
Is there any other questions with before I move on with what I've shown, the information, the sites, etc.? All right. This actually would pretty much be our last slide, sort of where we are, where we've come from, how do we get there, why, and then, potentially where we're going. And I will stop sharing. Reva, is the intent for us to go right into answering those questions, or would there be some discussion?
Yeah, exactly. Now we have a little bit of time set aside for any questions from the committee or discussion points as well.
Is it known that is there an existing overcrossing in Oregon?
You got that, Tim?
Yeah, there are no overcrossings yet. There's one plan for the Mariposa Preserve on I-5. That would be the first, if it's constructed, when it's constructed, it'll be the first overcrossing in Oregon.
So that's part of that Ashland area analysis. So, there's a whole lot of other states and certainly Canadian provinces that have those. And it's a shame that Oregon doesn't have one. And what a wonderful statement to have that in a place like, I'm very familiar with this road. There's a huge amount of traffic there, and it's a lot of people coming through, and it's just a great statement about the state of Oregon that we actually would have those, and it's a horrible statement that we don't. And so I think this is really an important project. I really applaud the efforts that you all have made, and I know Liza Jane has been deep into this and recognizes how important it is. But this is a big deal because it'll be very visible. It's a lot of folks know that stretch, and it'd really be great to have that out there. I mean, it's very impactful. So thank you very much for the work.
Yeah.
Mark Stern.
Yeah, I was just curious, a couple of the two sites you showed as examples where there would be an overpass, and it looked like, and you mentioned, private ag fields on either side. How much, I mean, how big does the overpass need to be for elk and deer, and how much, does it go into I'm sure it's site specific in a lot of ways, but does it go a quarter mile into the private ground or a half a mile or just I'd just be curious to hear a little bit of vision of what that may look like.
Go ahead, Colin.
Yeah, I can start off, Mark. That's a fantastic question, and that question actually was brought up at our second workshop in Wallowa about a month ago, just over a month ago. And Leslie and Jenna provided an answer, like a technical answer, and I cannot recall off the top of my head about how far, the sort of the overcrossing sort of trail needs to be on both sides. But in terms of the width, it depends on the type of species. Generally speaking, for elk, they need to be a lot sort of wider, the overcrossing, and that as Carl, as you were mentioning, I totally agree with you. It is a shame we don't have more, but in the sense of like glass half full, we can learn a lot of the lessons from previously constructed overcrossings and undercrossings to apply best practices. I think some early editions of overcrossings, maybe the sort of geometry, the location wasn't correct for the type of species, and maybe it didn't work out as well as intended. But I think now, as a sort of a trade, I think we're sort of on the sort of we're really refined out and almost perfecting the process. Turn over to Tim if he has additional details about what I forgot, but we could always get back to you, Mark, if needed.
Yeah, I think that would probably be best. And I think you're spot on, Mark. It really is sort of location specific. When you get to the size and how large that approach needs to be for wildlife use. And it's interesting that geography over there. A lot of those places where we're talking about overcrossings, sometimes you see places that seem like they would lend themselves more naturally to that, where you've got maybe a slope on one side and maybe flat land or not as much of a slope on the other, where seemingly it would feel like it would be a natural place to put something kind of a bridge, because that's what an overcrossing is. In this particular case, it seems like it would kind of stick out, wouldn't it? It doesn't look very natural in that geography. What we know about overcrossings is that they're favored by most wildlife. I think that's the key. Is there are in terms of wildlife species use, there are very few that would turn away from that overcrossing. There are a number of species who are really reluctant to use an undercrossing or an underpass, and that's why if you can accommodate an overcrossing, you can really accommodate a lot more wildlife than you can with an undercrossing. So, yeah, we will definitely get back to you on that. It's an interesting question, and it's much more complicated, of course, when you bring into it private lands, where there really is going to be some loss of utilization, right, of those fields, that pasture land, and then of course you have the fencing element, which is also it's a requirement of these kinds of projects, and but then it becomes much more complicated when you've got domestic animals in the mix as well. So there are 4 overcrossings planned for the Bend of Subtle Lake project, all in the vicinity of Black Butte. To Carl's question, there's one that's planned, and we actually have the funding to construct it. That's the one at Mariposa Preserve on I-5, and then we have a number that we're trying to get to a place where we actually have money for full design and engineering, and prospectively putting us in a position where we can raise the money for construction. But the federal chaos, I think, maybe is raising some havoc in terms of our ability to really be able to marshal the funds necessary to effect construction, let alone design and engineering, which I would say is why OCRF funding in part has been so important, especially the multi-year funding, for these kinds of projects, because there is just not a dedicated source of of any kind for wildlife crossings, except there have been monies allocated, but those have been spent or otherwise obligated. So here we sit, a lot of places in the state that need to be evaluated for the appropriateness of a crossing or retrofit of an existing culvert or bridge. But we sit here and not really have all of the funding we need to really tackle those things. And so Oregon Wildlife Foundation has been super pleased to be able to work with OCRF. OCRF funding, in large part, has been helpful in leveraging private giving as well. So we have several private donors who give to this work, I think in part with the understanding and acknowledgement that the state is also stepping forward with some funding to help with this work too. So it's imperative to have a place like OCRF to come to or with these kinds of projects. And I just hope we can keep those dollars rolling in that direction.
Tim, that's really important for us to articulate exactly what you said, somehow get that to the legislators in the context of this lodging tax bill. They have to understand what's at stake and how OCRF is a key player to make these things happen. I mean, it's very gratifying for us to be part of that, but man, if it dries up, it's really going to be a bummer. So
yeah,
we should have a little bit of further discussion on that as we proceed.
Yeah, for sure. We and Oregon Wildlife Foundation has been contributing to a lot of the legislative research and sort of languaging around some of the bills, the tire tax, the transient lodging tax initiative, the 1% for wildlife. So a lot of the background, for example, around wildlife crossings and where the funding came from, specifically calling out OCRF, is detailed in a lot of those legislative briefs that we're contributing to and that are being shared within the legislature.
Right. Jim Hammett.
Yeah, this question really doesn't have anything to do with wildlife crossings, but it does have a lot to do with wildlife collisions. And I'm just interested, Tim or Colin, if you have had any involvement with ODOT in terms of lowering speed limits in these high impact areas, because we do it for schools, we do it for municipalities, we do it for all sorts of things, but there's always this reluctance to lower speed limit. And having lived in the John Day Valley for years, there is a huge difference between 50 miles an hour and 75 miles an hour in terms of being able to avoid animals. I mean, to me, that's the biggest bang for the buck. But I just am interested to see what resistance there is, if that's a possibility, particularly nighttime speed limits, if they can do that. But it's tragic to see the number of deer that are killed between Dayville and John Day. And I know most of them are killed at night and with people doing 65, 70 miles an hour. And they just, the deer don't have a chance. The driver doesn't have a chance at those. Yeah. But again, has nothing to do with wildlife crossings, but I am interested in low cost.
Yeah, absolutely. You're spot on. I think there's a number of things that we could be doing short of building, new infrastructure, including really taking a hard look at existing infrastructure and what can be done to, retrofit or accommodate wildlife movement better using what's already there. But your point around reducing speeds, it goes with signage. Speed reduction is probably a harder sell for ODOT, maybe. I think that the question's always been enforcement, sort of like on the signage side as well. People don't pay a lot of attention to the signs and so as a consequence, they really don't do a lot in terms of altering their behavior. That really is true when there's no enforcement. So I think if we if we really want some results here, we need to start enforcing the existing laws that are already on the books about how fast people are traveling in these corridors, and whether they're whether they're really attending to duly to all the signage that's there telling them they need to slow down.
May I add something, Carl?
Sure, Liza Jane.
Thank you. Jim, those are great questions, and I thought of them as well because I knew how long this project could take. And, on the daily, deer are getting wiped out. I found one in our river yesterday that rolled along the highway, and so those counts are really low. Our mule deer populations are tanking, and it's just critical. So I was looking for different pre-options that we could have, and ODOT has been such a great partner in our project, showing up at all the meetings and helping in any way they can. They got some more signs, but everybody acknowledges they don't work. I asked for a dusk to dawn speed reduction with a doubling of the fine. And it turns out that Oregon, bless our hearts, we don't have a definition of nighttime on the books. So they weren't able to try something like that because they don't know when it's nighttime. And we're looking at possibly those signs that will blink when there's movement to alert drivers. But they're effective, but they're expensive and not all that effective. So we're trying to come up with every way we can. And you're right, what tourist season, people are driving so fast, and it makes it worse. But the things I wanted to add, Colin and Tim, I just appreciate you so much. And the folks that have been working on this were a diverse, big group. And then locally, I just have never worked on anything that has such positive support for it. I have yet to hear a word against what we're trying to do. And I think by building something, even if it sticks out a bit, it does say to the community and the people that visit here that the wildlife is worth it. And that we're aware that we have an impact on them, and I think it would just grow from there in our efforts. The more we can put them up there and people hit animals less, that in the future we can see that these things will be just the way we think, but they're critically important, and I'm looking forward to our success here. Thanks.
Thank you, Liza Jane. I know you've been a key player in this, and really appreciate your efforts. This is a local project with statewide impact if you guys can pull this off. And so that we just got to keep moving forward. Mark Stern, you have your hand up.
Yeah, great project and great discussion. It just reminded me, I think up in Washington State, Washington Department of Wildlife put collars on 3 or 4 elk in a herd that regularly cross the highway, and those collars then activated the flashing lights when the herd got close to crossing the highway. So just another example of not an easy fix, but another way to increase awareness.
Oh, that could be a great idea. Hard to do that with individual deer. Okay, well, great. Thank you very much. I think everyone agrees this is a great area, and really great for OCRF to be involved in these wildlife crossing projects across the state. And we need to articulate that to the powers that be. Well, thank you all for coming, presenting to us. And I think it's time to move on to our next presenter.
Thanks very much, everybody.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Reva, you want to introduce the next presenter?
Yeah, I'd love to. So next up, we have Sarah Rose, who has agreed to come speak with us today. She's coming from the Northwest Bat Hub at OSU Cascades, talking about the Audible Bats project that OCRF has funded a few different rounds of, and I'm sure she'll get into that. But yeah, thanks so much for joining, Sarah, and I'll let you take it away and tell us a little bit about Audible Bats.
Awesome, thank you. Let me get my stuff shared. Oh, don't want to
Got
start
it.
at the end.
Oh, you had it. We had it for a second.
Yeah, it started at the end for some reason, so we're gonna go ahead and. Okay. And then I'm actually gonna play some sounds for you, so I need to make sure it's gonna let me do that. Oh, hold on. I make everything actually the bats make everything complicated. Maybe. Do I share my sound? Okay, maybe not. We'll see if it works. Okay. Does that look good to everybody?
Can't see it.
Can't see it. Okay, great. Try one more time here. You know. Share.
And Sarah, you
There we
could
go.
always send it to me. Oh, yeah,
There we
we can
go.
see it. Looks good.
Okay, there we go.
It says Audible Bats Project.
Excellent. That's what I wanted. Okay. So yeah, so this project's been going on for a while, and I have the tendency to talk for well over an hour when I talk about it, and I didn't want to subject you all to that because it's not what you've signed up for. So I'm going to take us through kind of quickly, mostly just through the timeline of this project and how OCRF has helped out. But again, I'm Sarah. I am the project lead for this particular project. The Northwest Bat Hub, where I work, is part of the HERS Lab, Humans and Ecosystems Resilience and Sustainability Lab at OSU Cascades. We're really closely partnered with the National Park Service, but we also work with the full alphabet soup of state and federal agencies in the Pacific Northwest. And, oh gosh, what is it? Go. There we go. Okay, so this project was first conceived way back in the early 2000s. A man named Tom Rodhouse, who used to work for the National Park Service and helped to kind of spearhead the foundation of the Northwest Bat Hub, was out catching bats in John Day fossil beds. And at the time, it was believed that spotted bats, Euderma maculatum, were a pretty rare species in Bend. This had been the thought, or not in Bend, in Oregon. This had been the thought for a few decades. They were pretty rare across the landscape. Scientists didn't encounter them very often, but Tom was out catching all different species of bats in John Day, and as he was setting up his nets, he was hearing these very distinctive clicking sounds, which I'm going to play for you. And this is either going to be a test of technology or it's going to be a free hearing test for you, because these are kind of high frequency sound that not everyone can hear. Here we go. So I'm hoping that's playing for you right now. And if it is, then what you just heard is the echolocation call of the spotted bat. And if you couldn't hear that, it's just a very distinct high-pitched ticking sound. And this is really unique. So most bats are echolocating at a high frequency above the range of human hearing, which we call ultrasound. And one of the ways that we typically study bats is by recording those echolocation calls with some very specialized equipment, and we can use them to identify species. However, that equipment is specifically built for ultrasound, and our spotted bats are difficult little babes, And they're actually echolocating around 10 kilohertz, so well within the range of healthy human hearing. And so we believe that part of the reason that we used to think that spotted bats were rare in Oregon is because our equipment is actually not great at recording them. So as Tom is out here catching bats of all different species, but not spotted bats, but he is hearing spotted bats, he conceived of this idea to have people do listening surveys for them. If the equipment can't pick them up, but humans can hear them, then that means that we need to get people out on the landscape to listen for these bats. Tom is a very busy and enthusiastic man with a lot of different interests, and so this idea kind of fell by the wayside for quite a while. But he kept noodling with it for the next 15 years or so. And he was thinking about, this low frequency of these bats, the fact that they will fly sometimes 500 feet above a canyon bottom, but always very high in the air. They roost in really sheer cliffs. Just everything about them made them really hard to confirm their presence on the landscape. And so we had this perception that they were rare, but we were starting to learn that they weren't. They're a species of conservation concern under a number of different designations. So they're a conservation strategy species here in Oregon. The Forest Service and BLM both list them as species of greatest conservation need, I believe, and then a number of states have them listed for a few different designations. So we are across the board concerned about our spotted bats, which are native to all of Western US. And so in 2016, they began, this was before I came to the Bat Hub, they began kind of testing to see if some sort of structured listening survey would be effective for monitoring these bats. There wasn't any funding for the project at the time, so it was just some HERS Lab volunteers, a few folks from the Forest Service, and it was really local, a lot of surveys done out at Smith Rock State Park, and they were only listening for spotted bats. In 2019, they started trying to recruit volunteers. No one in this audience will probably be surprised to learn that for citizen science projects, most of your volunteers are retirees, which is generally awesome. However, as we age, we tend to lose our hearing, beginning with the upper registers and kind of coming downwards. So as we get older, we can't hear as high of frequencies. And it turns out that most people of retirement age cannot hear spotted bats. So the first year of the citizen science effort was not particularly fruitful. Now I am a very confident and enthusiastic individual, and by this point, by 2019, I had been at the HERS Lab for a little while, and I decided to try to take over this project and see if I could get some younger volunteers recruited to go listen for spotted bats. Yeah, so my first season taking over this project was 2020. I was not allowed to train anyone in person because of COVID, and it was extremely difficult to recruit volunteers. I did get some. I mostly bullied all of my coworkers into going out and doing surveys, so we did get some data collected. And one thing that was really cool, Tom Rodhouse, that same man who conceived the project in the first place, was out listening for spotted bats and happened to hear the social call of another species, the pallid bat. And we'll talk a little bit more about pallid bats in just a moment, but this was really exciting for us. And we thought, hey, if we're going to be listening for spotted bats, we might as well listen for these social calls from pallid bats as well. We did end up skipping 2021. Again, I was fairly disheartened after the 2020 field season. It was really difficult. We were still kind of getting back on our feet after having to change the way that we do all of our data collection. But we restarted the project in 2022 and expanded it. So instead of just Central Oregon, we were collecting data across Oregon. And instead of just listening for spotted bats, we also included pallid bats. Now, pallid bats have, at least in the Pacific Northwest, almost 100% range overlap with spotted bats. So it just made sense that we would do surveys for both species in the same places. They both really like the high desert. They like to roost in cliffs. They have slightly different life history strategies, but in general, you can find them in very similar habitats. Now, spotted bats were listening for their echolocation calls. With pallid bats, they actually echolocate at a high frequency above the range of human hearing. But when they talk to each other and produce social calls, they drop that frequency to within the range of human hearing. It is a little bit higher pitched than the spotted bat echolocation call, and it's very distinctive because it's this little triplicate call. And I'm not going to try to play it because it's even harder to hear via a speaker than it is in person. It's quieter and higher pitched than the spotted bat call, and so it's a little bit more delicate. But it's pretty easy to distinguish between the two once you've learned a little bit more about them. And so, yeah, we are trying to see if we can use instances of these social calls to locate maternity colonies where the mother bats gather in the spring to raise their pups together. At these maternity colonies, they're very, very chatty. They're talking to each other constantly. So we suspect that there's a relationship between how often you're hearing these social calls and your distance to a maternity colony. So at this point, we had two goals for the project: to try to improve spotted bat range maps and or occupancy predictions in the Pacific Northwest specifically, and to try to predict pallid bat maternity colony locations again in the Pacific Northwest. So yeah, for 2022, we kind of dove back in. And again, we're doing this across Oregon, and this was the first year actually that we were funded by OCRF, and we're able to like dedicate some real time and energy to this project. But as you can imagine, it's a pretty tall order to ask members of the community to go out into the desert wilderness and sit in the dark, often at the top of a cliff, to listen for bats. We get a lot of initial enthusiasm. A lot of people are really excited and want to learn about bats. I get tons of people attending training events, but it can be a little spooky for people and a little intimidating. And so we weren't getting data collected across a broad area quite the way that we were hoping to. And so in 2023, we started having our field technicians do surveys. And again, we were able to do this very specifically because of OCRF. Those funds did pay for our technicians' time, at least in Oregon. At this point, the project expanded to Idaho and Washington as well. And it was really economical for us to have our technicians do this because they were already traveling all over to set up bat detectors. And now we're just tacking an extra 90 minutes onto their workday to do these surveys. These are three very happy technicians from last field season out listening for bats at Chickahominy Reservoir. And incorporating our technicians and also asking our partners' technicians to do surveys has really increased the number of surveys that we've been able to do and the scope that we've been able to cover with this new survey protocol. It's been fantastic. Again, OCRF covers all of this for Oregon, which is just pretty amazing. And then a few of our other partners chip in for Idaho and Washington surveys as well. And this effort is going to expand this year, although I will not have technicians because of the federal funding situation. But that's okay. We're still moving full steam ahead in other ways. I did want to share a few very preliminary results. So here we see our sample units that we use to decide where we're going to do surveys. And those dark orange squares are places where we have detected spotted bats using this listening method. So no equipment, no nothing. We've only detected them using human ears. And as you can see, using that method, we've gotten some detections outside of their known range, which is really exciting and encouraging. The yellow squares are where we've only recorded them using our specialized equipment. And then the kind of medium orange color is where we've confirmed the presence of this species via both methods. So I think this is really promising. This does show that in certain locations, at least, it is a lot easier to hear spotted bats than to record them. And actually, I'm gonna skip one slide here. For our pallet bats, the story is a little bit different because we're only thinking about these social calls and their relationship to maternity colonies. I just have a map showing where we've recorded their social calls using our detectors, and then also where we've heard their social calls using these listening surveys. So again, we're filling in some data gaps for these species, and I'm hopeful that by the end of this season, we'll be able to start doing some more intense analysis and maybe start to do some predictive work, predictive modeling to see if we can start pinpointing more maternity colony locations. And then on the volunteer side of things, so far we've had over 115 volunteers engaged. A lot of these folks come to our group survey events. We meet at a campground, and then I teach them how to survey for these bats. We go kind of disperse across the landscape and listen in small groups, and then we meet back at the campground, have a camp out, and usually spend the next morning just talking about bats. I answer a lot of questions about bats during these events. But people also go out and do surveys independently, which is great. I have a few really dedicated volunteers that have been coming back for the past few years to do those on their own. We also provide an option now for people to do opportunistic surveys. So it's like no commitment. They just watch a quick online video, learn how to identify these bat calls, and then if they happen to be out and they happen to hear a bat, they fill out a 30-second data sheet, and I've got a new data point. So that's been really successful. I've got well over 200 people on my volunteer email list who are potentially interested in volunteering. And then so far, 37 additional volunteers that have signed up to do surveys this year. So all around shaping up quite nicely. We've got 4 group survey events, a training event, just a ton of stuff going on this summer. And it's all very exciting. I'm constantly shamelessly plugging volunteerism. So if anyone is interested, wants to talk about this, or wants to get involved, please reach out to me. Like I said, we don't have any field staff this year. That's something that has typically been funded by our federal partners. And so with the loss of those funds, myself and my volunteers are doing all of the data collection this year. So any help with recruitment or participation is wildly appreciated. Yeah, and with that, I'll stop.
Thank you very much, Sarah. That was really impressive, the work you're doing. You're basically getting some very important basic science stuff on distribution that we don't have, and that you can't really make decisions on how you're going to manage these species if you don't know that stuff. So This is really fundamental. It's also very much in line, the fact you're working so hard to get these volunteers out, that's very much what is near and dear to the OCRF's heart, getting the public engaged and getting them to appreciate species like pallet and spotted bats. It's all what we're about. So this is very much in what we're all intending to do, and we really appreciate you getting out there and actually make it happen. Kelly?
Yeah, Sarah, sorry if I missed it. This was a cool presentation. I am a native Missourian, so I am deep. I was in charge of our speleological society out there. So I did a lot of caving with bats back there. So I'm wondering, since there's not a lot of caves or that I'm aware of in these areas, are they kind of nesting, roosting like in just crevices, or where are they?
Yeah.
Where are they at in the data?
So first, we have a ton of caves.
Okay.
Yeah, ours are just smaller for the most part. But yeah, a lot of our bats, including these species, don't roost in caves here. So spotted bats are exclusively cliff roosting. So they mostly roost in really, really small cracks in the most vertical, sheer, ridiculous tall cliff faces you can imagine. Lake Billy Chinook, if you're familiar, is like the spotted bat hotspot in Central Oregon. There's so many of them out there. They love it. Pallid bats are a bit more flexible. They also like a good sheer cliff, but they will roost in like under sloughing bark in a tree, or they actually really like bat boxes, buildings, bridges. They're a bit more, they'll take what they can get kind of thing. Yeah,
cool.
and then we've got a lot of like tree roosting bats in Oregon, and a lot of bats that like buildings in Oregon too.
Yeah, no, they love my house. I spent a lot of time getting them out of our house recently. Yeah.
Any other questions for Sarah? Well, Sarah, I really appreciate you coming and talking with us again. This fits very much with what we're all about. And so keep up that great work and get people out there getting excited about what really look like amazing creatures. I don't think I've really seen many pictures of spotted or pallid bats, and that's really a wonderful thing. So thank you.
Yeah, they're very, very cool creatures. I've still never seen a spotted bat up close, but I can tell you that pallids are pretty amazing in person.
Yeah. Well, great. Well, thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
And good luck in the future.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming. All right. Well, that was quite nice. I'm trying to, again, I can't find my agenda here.
If you're looking for what's next, Carl, it looks like we have public comment,
Public comment, yeah.
next on the agenda. So I'm happy to open that up. If there's anyone who's logged in and wants to provide comment for today's agenda items, now would be the time. You can go ahead and take a few minutes to tell us your thoughts. I don't see anything, but I see a comment from Sarah Rose. It says, thanks, everyone. Looks like she just headed out. I think we can close it for public comment today. And then looks like next we have a break. How much of a break did you want to take, Carl, today?
We're running a tad bit behind, so let's make it, let's get back at 2:20. It's 2:13 now. That gives us a little bit of time. So we'll see everybody at 2:20.
Great.
All right. See you soon. All right, well, Reva will give everybody a little bit more time. So have you communicated with Quinn Thomas at all?
A little bit. I have a little bit to share for today's communications update. On something that I sent out a questionnaire that they had sent to me. So I can share that in a little bit. But we actually have our meeting tomorrow, so we'll probably have, they're going to be sharing more with us tomorrow,
Okay, go ahead.
tomorrow morning. Yeah, did you want to get started or give folks a little bit more time to come back?
back? We don't have yeah, here we go. Yeah, we're getting folks back.
Okay.
Yeah, so why don't you go ahead, Reva? It's one of the things that's out there for us is our strategic communications planning with Quinn Thomas. And we thought we'd give an update on that. And so Reva has some stuff for us.
I do. I just have a little bit to share. I don't have a ton, but I can provide an update of some of the recent things that they've been working on for us. And then we also do have a meeting with them tomorrow morning. So I'm sure they're going to be sharing more updates on what they've been up to. But as of right now, so I had just sent out a questionnaire to the grantees that was developed by Quinn Thomas. And it was a pretty short questionnaire, had about 7 simple questions. And sent out to, different organizations that, were showing kind of measurable outcomes or growth and success. And then Quinn Thomas plans to develop a short, just like less than 200-word case study on each folks that fill out that questionnaire. And then they plan to conduct media outreach for 2 of the grantees. And the goal there is, it's storytelling, and for them to do some showcase like how OCRF support has contributed to their progress. So that's what they're going to be doing with that questionnaire that was just sent out. What else have they been doing? So they have finished the messaging, as you all at your May 6th meeting were contributing to kind of massaging the terms of that messaging. So I think your feedback was really helpful in kind of getting that to a good spot. So they've kind of finalized that messaging for those different audiences. And they are still working on the legislative fact sheet. It was kind of in a draft form, and they're still getting that completed. So it doesn't seem like it was in a place for us to share it during the legislative session, unfortunately.
Well,
they're still working on.
If there's any way, we got 3 more weeks basically.
Mm-hmm.
And a huge reason we engaged them was to try to generate something that we could use.
Right.
So that needs to be, if there's any way to get something put together that they think would be effective, we need to do it and do it soon. This has been a bit of a frustration for me because they're only meeting, and I think it's in part because it's the only time Tim Grethers can meet, is when I have my very rare but recurring teaching clinic. So I have not been able to participate, and that's quite frustrating. If any of you all are available tomorrow to meet with Quinn Thomas, the input you all gave them the last time, I think, was incredible and moved things forward at a rate that needed to happen. And so your input was great. And if anyone could connect with them tomorrow and maybe urge them to try to come up with something for the legislature, that'd be really key.
Carl, we can't have everyone join because we can't have a quorum, but we can have a, like Kelly has kind of offered
to
attend before.
If 1 or 2 people showed up, that would be great. So that segues a little bit. now we're talking about the strategic communication thing, but that segues into the legislative update, which we didn't have as an actual item, but as you all know, Srishti is not here because she's in the middle of really pushing things. It's a critical time. The way I understand it, there's about 3 weeks left as they're considering all these different bills and the ones that impact us. Specifically, there's a beaver related bill with funding tied to that that I think is still going. I have not heard a handicap on that, but I think it's definitely got a chance. And then this 1% for wildlife bill is really key, and that's an increase in the lodging tax by 1%. There's been quite a bit of momentum on this one. It sounds positive. I think it's still maybe a long shot in the scheme of things, but it's a whole lot more likely than it seemed in the past. Mark Stern has been doing some great work on that, along with Srishti. My wife has been writing op-eds and testified before the committee. And any of you all, as private citizens, can certainly comment on it and say how that would impact, not particularly the OCRF, but all of essentially the wildlife mandate that ODF&W has to protect all of wildlife species, but doesn't have the funding to do it. This would go a long ways to make that happen. And one of the selling points to me is just, maybe a month ago, the state of Hawaii added 0.75% lodging tax on for wildlife in Hawaii. And so here they were able to get what must be an incredibly powerful lodging lobby to sort of allow this to happen. I think because they knew that that's why people go to Hawaii, in part is to enjoy the natural environment and the wonderful features that are there, and the governor recognized the importance of funding that. So they recently, just 3 weeks ago or so, passed that law. And if Oregon can't do it, that's a shame. So I would certainly challenge your own legislator with that. If you wanted to write a letter, say, look, man, Hawaii did it. And as it is, with that added percentage, we have one of the lowest lodging taxes still in the country. So, but the lodging folks are actively opposed and trying to stop it. So anyway, again, as private citizens, you guys could have a powerful voice. They've been asking for editorials. Oh, and that makes me think of Moret, the incredibly great writer. Srishti is trying to get newspapers across the state inundated with letters of support or op-eds, and Ann is writing an op-ed for our paper, my wife, and certainly something in Central Oregon, Moret would be very powerful. So anyway, that's the legislative update. Any questions on that or the Quinn Thomas update? Mark Stern, you've been engaged in all of this. Do you have anything to add? I think you're on mute, or I can't hear you. Mark, are you on mute?
I think maybe his sound isn't working. Like, seems like he's not able to get it off of mute
Oh, I
for
see.
some reason.
I have it so that he's on. I can't affect his mute, I don't think. Well, anyway, Mark, sorry about that, but Mark's been working really hard on this, and hopefully we can get this across the finish line, be a huge impact for the department, the whole department. All right. The next is business items. Reva, do you have something on that?
I do, yeah. And just to add to that, maybe at our next meeting, I can build in a more robust legislative update from Shristi and anyone else, because at that point it will be concluded, right, for the session. So
Pretty
I'm sure
close.
there'll be a lot to share. Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll build that into the agenda then for our next meeting.
Oh, I just
So
have
I just have
another point. If you are going to communicate with your legislature or whatever, this is an update that Reva may be giving us anyway, but it's relevant. As we know, with the current federal, we just heard another anecdote about the effect of the changes at the federal level. Well, I think directly as an outcome of those changes on the federal level, we have received over 100 applications for this RFP. That is, I think, the direct outcome that we're now one of the few shows in town to fund these incredibly important projects. And that's a great data point to give your legislators to say, look, this is a desperate situation for many people and many projects and many programs. And here's an example that now the OCRF, with this relatively small pocket of money, have had an increase of 20% of the number of applicants that we average. So just another data point. So anyway, sorry, Reva, go ahead with the business update.
no worries. Yeah, and that I was going to share that we have received 101 applications from our spring grant cycle for this round. So most we've ever received in a round. Believe that's the first thing I had up. Yeah. So the most we've had before this was 88, I believe, and I think it was last spring. Spring is typically a little bit more projects, applications being received at that time than compared to the fall, from what I've seen. But this is by far the most, maybe not shocking to you all with the current grant situation, that we have this pot of funding that's still available and funded by the state legislative fund. So 101 applications, buckle up for reviews coming. There's, a little bit more on your plate than maybe last round, where we had half as many applications. It was, I think, 52. So just kind of be prepared for that. And along with that, I'm going to try to get these assignments out as soon as possible this week, if I can, to you all, so that you can start looking at them as soon as possible, getting a feel for what the projects are for this round. So where we are in the spring grant cycle is that all the technical reviews have been assigned, and we have about 35 technical reviewers, staff working on these to get their technical expertise in there for you all to review when you get into your review period. And then the advisory committee review period is mid-June to mid-July, but like I said, I'm gonna get those out as soon as I can to you all, because I have a feeling that'll help with the larger load for this round. And then also, as a reminder, we do have scheduled for July 9th through 11th, if you'd like to reach out to technical reviewers and just kind of talk about any of the projects. If you're reading their staff comments and you have a question about something, about the methods or or what they've noted down, feel free to reach out to them during that time. I'm going to block their schedules for probably 11 o'clock at that time. But if that doesn't work, if you're willing, feel free to reach out and see if there's another time that works for both of you. But I'm just going to go ahead and block the 11 o'clock time, July 9th through 11th for technical review.
Reva,
And I figure that should be
could I
a good
ask
time
you
right
to-
before you.
Reva, could I ask you do me a favor, do
Yeah.
us a favor? Those kind of that timing of that, if you could
Mhm.
like email each of us, like, okay, here's the timing, here's the time you'll be able to talk to staff, and have that in like one
Mhm.
place that we can refer back to help us get scheduled. Because as Reva said, and said it quite accurately, we got to buckle up for this because we got a lot of projects to review, and that's a lot of responsibility for us.
Yeah.
It's desperate time. We have got to really give it all to get the best projects possible and to really work to assess these. So to help us out, Reva, if you could just put
Mhm.
a little timetable, make sure you got this
Oh,
done.
absolutely. Yeah, of
And
course.
and you can
Yeah.
talk to staff at this point, because we don't want to blow this. We want to really put a strong effort into it. Kelly, I see you have your hand up. Kelly Timchak.
Yeah. This is kind of a question related but unrelated, because I know we still have our Wildlife Crossing RFP opportunity. Looks like it's still open maybe till July 15th or so. Maybe you've mentioned this and I just haven't heard it correctly, but I know the last round we had like those 2 applications. Was that only the 2 applications, or like more applications came into the group and they screened it down to those 2? Are we still receiving applications for that RFP? What's that one looking like?
Yeah, good question, Kelly. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about Wildlife Crossing stuff in a little bit, but I think that at the last meeting, Rachel Wheat, the subject matter expert on Wildlife Crossings, did a nice breakdown of that. And I don't know if she went into the detail, but basically that first release for Wildlife Crossing solicitations, 8 letters of interest came in total. And she was the one who knows the most about the Wildlife Crossing funding restrictions, and she evaluated those. There were only 2 that met the restrictions, and those were the ones that were then invited to submit a full application. And then those were the ones that were presented their projects at the May 6th meeting. So essentially,
Cool.
These restrictions are so strict that we
Mhm.
had 2 projects that would meet them, essentially.
Great. Okay. I might
Yeah.
reach out I missed the last meeting, so apologies for that, but I will, I might reach out to Rachel then. I've had a couple people reach out to me with questions about like,
Oh,
can it be
okay.
fisheries projects too, or just wildlife, or fisheries considered under wildlife, like, or culverts, those kind of things. So, or I can reach out to you too, Reeve. I'll direct people your way, but
My
Either way,
recollection,
I've
I think that
I've
we
been
certainly
reaching out to
have,
Rachel as well.
yeah, we have expanded that because Wildlife Crossings does include fish. And so there
Cool.
may, culvert activities, as long as they're at that point where it's on the ground and they're going to put them in, then that would
Mhm.
work. So I think we want to find anything we can. So Kelly, thanks for working with your local folks, and maybe you can help them track down some money for that. So by all
yeah, I
means,
think some
reach
coming
out
in.
or Reva
Yeah,
and
thanks
try to
for
send it
spreading the
to them.
word and talking with people. We did just have a question, Kelly, about it was someone reaching out about a fish passage project for these funds, and the answer from Rachel was that it does have to be wildlife centric, so that should be at the forefront, but it can also have a benefit to fish passage, so it has to be both, essentially. It can't just be fish passage, though, because that was those funds, I think 13 million went
There's-
to ODFW fish
Yeah, there's
passage.
another opportunity for fish
Yeah.
passage. Yep, for sure. Okay, thank
Exactly.
you. That's what
So
I was
these
wondering.
ones, these ones need to have a wildlife centric goal. All right, any other questions about the spring grant cycle reviews and what we have up here on the slide before we move on to talk a little bit more about wildlife crossings?
Rita, I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead,
hear
Liza
me?
Jane. I can.
Oh.
Mhm.
Okay. Well, are you going to send out the list so we can look at any conflicts of interest before you divide them up again?
Yeah, I will. I'm going to send out a list of all projects, and then if you all can just, I'll specify this in the email, but get back to me on if there's any big red flag conflict of interest for you and your ability to review it as a objective reviewer.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the question. It's a good one. I probably should have that on the timeline for when that's going out, but it'll be coming to you soon. All right. Well, I think we already talked a little bit about wildlife crossing projects, but just to make sure everyone's on the same page for where we're at in this process for the first wildlife crossing solicitation. The two projects that presented at the May 6th committee meeting, I'm going to be taking those projects to the ODFW Commission on June 13th. So just in about 10 days. Those recommended projects to them for final approval. And yeah, Mark Labhart's not here today, but hopefully they will go easy on me because I won't have Rachel with me to present. But hopefully it'll be a smooth approval for those projects. Cackler Marsh, headed by U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. They're going to be replacing a culvert and building a 60-foot span bridge across that road. So, and that's in the Basket Slough National Wildlife Refuge. That's the first project. The other one is the I-5 Mount Ashland exit project. That's going to be building a wildlife bench to improve wildlife passage underneath this underpass that's existing. And to hopefully significantly improve that for wildlife. So those are where those two projects are at in the process. And thank you all again for your time in reviewing those, hearing those presentations at last month's meeting. And I will keep you updated after the commission meeting on how that goes. So then for what we've already talked about a little bit was this need to do a second request for information for wildlife crossing projects. So that went out. I sent it out to you all, and Kelly, thanks for already kind of spreading the word and talking with your network on possible potential projects for this. I can send it out again if any of you all would like to have it fresh in your inbox, but we are going to be accepting letters of interest until July 11th. So still have quite a bit of time to get some interest in and hopefully get these wildlife passage projects for review. So again, those restrictions they're up there on the screen, but this has to be wildlife centric crossing projects. They have to be building infrastructure to improve or construct from scratch wildlife crossing infrastructure. So that could be like a bridge, culvert, overpass, tunnel on a roadway. So there has to be some association with a road. And monitoring and maintenance activities aren't allowed to be supported through this funding. And they can't have a standalone project for just feasibility or design. That could be part of the project, but it has to be involved with the construction of the infrastructure. And then the other key piece here is the funds have to be expended by April 30th, 2028, which is a little bit of a shorter timeline for big projects like these. So those are things to keep in mind when talking about these funds with folks.
So
Any
Reva,
questions on? Yeah, go ahead, Carl.
I do have a question. So if there's say a project where they have done a feasibility study, but they need to do a design, if they applied for a design and implementation and it could be done in that time frame, that would still qualify?
Yeah, I believe it's so if engineering design is part of the project that will result in the construction of an actual wildlife passage, some type of structure that's going to be associated with a roadway, that's okay. They can include design if it does result in capital construction.
Well, that broadens it a bit. I mean, I think that we need to emphasize that maybe in our conversations with folks, is that as I think people are to a point where it's like they've done the feasibility, they go, we need this here, but they maybe haven't designed it yet, but as long as they could design it and get it implemented in the 3-year window, then that would still work.
They need to have a site selected. So they couldn't be doing like where they're trying to figure out what site is the overpass going to go. But if they have a site selected, they have some related expenses like engineering or permitting is allowable.
See, that even makes me think of the presentation we just heard where they have identified, they've done it. They've got sites identified, and now they would just need to design and implement. Maybe, Liza Jane, are you still there?
Yes.
Well, I mean, maybe it's worth a conversation with the expert who I'm sorry, I've forgotten her name. Reva,
Rachel Wheat.
Rachel, to talk with Rachel about where you guys are at. If you've already kind of done some feasibility, and let's say there's one that's really ripe for picking, and something that could be done relatively quickly, you just need to design it and put it in. Maybe we could. Well, it's certainly worth a conversation to see if we can make that happen. So you might.
Yeah. I appreciate learning this because we are going to put in another letter of interest just because it's a good process to keep OCRS informed of where we are in the process. And I believe we're down to one selection, and they're going to present in July the design for that, because then that's how we find out how much money we have to raise. So I will pass this information on, and Tim and Colin can talk with Rachel. That's great.
Yeah, let's do that. Absolutely. Man, I would so love for us to, that would be great. Let's do it. So hopefully we can make something like that happen.
Okay, great. And I'll share these slides after the meeting today so you could send them along if you needed.
Oh, thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right, folks, any other thoughts about wildlife, the second release for wildlife crossing solicitation here? And really appreciate you guys, spreading the word as far as you can so we can get some good letters of interest in for this second release.
I talked to Sarah Rife specifically about the concept at one point of switching this money with ODOT to get some more flexible money. And if there's anybody in the department that could pull that off, it would be Sarah. And she was not feeling good about it. So I don't think that's going to happen. So we really got to track down folks to get this money deployed. It would just be a shame for it to not be used.
Well, we're gonna do what we can and hopefully get this get some great projects funded through the wildlife crossing funds for the state. All right. If we're ready to move on, I just have I don't have a lot left for today, but we can probably wrap up with just talking about our upcoming in-person meeting. So that's going to be July 29th. And then the day before that, Monday, July 28th, is our site visit that's planned for a few different locations around Sisters area. So I'm going to let Marette talk a little bit more about it, but I'll try to introduce it because she's been doing a lot of great work planning with working with her partners out there, Derek Staub from Trout Unlimited. But the plan is to go to one of the first OCRF projects that was funded, Link Creek near the Metolius River. And we plan to meet at Camp Sherman, get some lunch at the Camp Sherman store, and then head to Caldera Wilderness. And then maybe on the way, it's definitely going to be on the way for us. We're going to try and stop at one of the Bend to Subtle Lake wildlife crossing sites. So Marette, did you want to talk a little bit more detail about that?
Yeah, sure. I was curious, is there anybody who's never been to Camp Sherman before and the Metolius River, and is it going to be difficult to find? So Kelly, and we'll get maps and stuff. I just want to warn everybody that it's a kind of a cell phone desert. There's a few places. There's a couple trees that have like a sign that says cell phone booth on them. That there are a few places you can actually get out, sometimes with texts. That will make sure that we have some good maps. And it shouldn't be that hard. It's just off Highway 20. You just turn towards Camp Sherman and head to the Camp Sherman store. And I guess I was thinking that if we could sort of make a goal to get there by noonish, that would give you some time to use restrooms, grab some lunch if you need to. It's going to be busy in Camp Sherman in the end of July. But the store's got really great sandwiches to order and drinks and other snacks there. And it's just a fun, kind of an old time general store. And then we were going to zip up about 1 o'clock, just be ready to roll and drive to one of the sites that Derek from Trout Unlimited had worked on with kids on the Metolius, which is actually the confluence of where Lake Creek comes into the Metolius. And it's a place that they've done some planting and some replanting on. And then drive from there, just keep going on a gravel road till we get back onto the road to the highway. And we were going to stop. There's a big kind of a broad spot right at the highway, Road 14 intersection where we could park. And then Jeremy Austin from Central Oregon Land Watch, he's their wildlands and water program director, is very interested in talking to us about the Subtle Lake wildlife crossings. And they did receive some money from us, and he's grateful and he wants to meet everybody. And then we were going to head up from there to Subtle Lake and Camp Caldera, and they're closing up a session that day. So there's kind of kid craziness going on, and they've asked us to show up later in the afternoon, which is why we kind of changed the direction of the trip. So we'll be ending up at Caldera, walking a ways into an area and we'll talk to one of the Caldera counselors to just tell us a little bit about their program and the kids that have been doing this work. And then if we have time, we can stop at the restored confluence of Lake Creek and Subtle Lake, which had a little electro dam put in on it in 1940, which killed the sockeye salmon runs. And so there's been a lot of work done now to reestablish that passage all the way from the Metolius up Lake Creek, through Subtle Lake, into Link Creek, into Blue Lake. So those fish had a long journey. And so hopefully we'll be able to see all that. And I guess that's the plan. Any comments, questions?
Just thank you for doing that. Holy cow. I hate making plans, and it sounds like you've done a lot of legwork. So thank you.
Well, I've worked with Derek before, and he's great. He loves working with kids. Kids love working with him, and it takes a special person to do that. And I guess he also asked if I could invite the Forest Service. because they did some of the technical design work for putting the wood into Link Creek. And so I did talk to Nate Dockler, the fish biologist, and he's also willing to come out and happy to meet all of you. So that's the story, and we'll have hopefully something soon printed and to you, Reva, as soon as Derek finishes his conversations with Caldera. So, but yeah, I think we have
Awesome.
basically a plan.
Thank you so much, Marit. It's going to be a great site visit. I'm really looking forward to it. And yeah, just thanks again for all the work you've done with Derek and getting this site visit put together.
Sure.
I second that, Marat. Thank you. And
Yeah.
Reva, again, because we don't have a full committee here, if you could make sure that gets the timing, noon at Camp Sherman store, that everyone gets that information, maybe with a map attached or something.
Absolutely. I think it'll be good
This
to
week.
have locations for where we're going to be, especially if someone is going to be joining later and they can't come to the beginning. I want to make sure no one's going to get lost. So I'll have locations for each of those in an itinerary so that, maybe if you can't join till 2, hopefully you'll be able to come meet up with us that day.
Great. That sounds perfect. Mark?
Yeah, I look forward to the different site visits there. Marat, thanks for lining all that out. Reva, where are we meeting the following day? Where are we having dinner? Is it in Sisters or in Bend, or what's the geography for the rest of the trip or get together?
It's actually, we're going to stay in the Sisters area. So it should be all very close. Not a lot of driving necessary for the next day. So we're going to be staying in Sisters at the Best Western there. And then they actually have a meeting space at the Best Western that we're going to be able to use for our committee meeting the following day. And then dinner as well is going to be in Sisters. The exact restaurant hasn't been selected yet, but it'll be one of those Sisters restaurants.
Yeah, thanks. That sounds great.
I think we were talking about Three Creek Brewery, the brew pub we have in town.
Yep.
And if needed, if we know how many people are coming, I could try to see if there's opportunity for reservation. I don't know if there is that time of year, but I could try.
That's okay. Thanks, Marat. Tiffany and I are on it for all the reservations
Okay,
for the dinner, but I think you've done enough. Thank you so much.
Okay.
We'll take it from there. But yeah, so Sisters area for Monday and Tuesday for both those days. Yeah, I look forward to it and seeing you guys. Hopefully, a lot of folks are going to be able to make it. And Carl, did you have anything to wrap up today's meeting that you wanted to?
No, I think we've covered a lot of things. Just you guys remember that legislative stuff is going on and pretty critical. See what we can do. But other than that, I think we covered it. Does anybody else have any parting thoughts or anything they wanted to bring up?
Carl, I was just going to say, and sorry I couldn't get my mic to work before, but if anybody wants to talk about the transient lodging tax or 1% for wildlife, or how to maybe put some energy into it, feel free to reach out and contact me.
Thanks, Mark. Appreciate that. Christy just texted me and said what great work you're doing, and she appreciates it. So, all right. Well, great. Let's thank you all for coming, and we had some great presentations today. Really hope that you all are planning on coming to this in-person meeting. It's going to be, I think, great. I'm really looking forward to it. Looking forward to seeing you all in person. I really want to see you in person, so it'll be a great thing. Take the effort. So with that, I think we can adjourn and get outside. It's a beautiful day, and go from there. All right. So adios.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.